What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1530 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, the best baseball in the city outside the Dome. Join me this Sunday, August 4th at Christie Pitts. I'm recording live at 2 p.m. just beyond the left field fence. Drop by, say hi. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut, is Fergus Hambleton from the Sattalites. Welcome to Toronto Mic, Fergus.
Thank you so much, Toronto Mic. 1,530. I feel proud to be in that number there.
Well, you know, better late than never. I have talked to you in the past because I produce a show for Humble and Fred, and Fred will often talk about one of his favorite bands to see live. He's got great memory. Probably we're going back to the 80s with this one, but one of his favorite bands to see live is the Sattalites, and he would often talk about that. And I booked Miles Goodwin from April Wine on the show because that was Humble's favorite band when he was growing up in Moose Jaw. He was a big April Wine guy.
Nice.
So for Freddie, I said, I'm going to go out. I'm going to get you Fergus Hambleton from the Sattalites. And I remember reaching out to you and getting you on the show back when they did it in person.
That was a great show, too. Lots of jokes, those guys, like nonstop.
They moved it to Zoom, though. Not quite the same. It's still funny. And it's
they just dropped the M, and it's still a zoo.
Yeah, very good. The Morning Zoo. Now, so it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person here today. I want to shout out a mutual friend of ours, Blair Packham. Do you know Blair?
I do indeed, yes. Blair and I got together. We met actually at this thing called Songworks that a fellow named Dave Baxter put together, and there were a bunch of people, and we put our names in a hat and sort of pulled things out, and Blair and I wrote a nice song out of that.
So you collaborated at
We
this
did indeed,
event.
And we became good friends.
Well, Blair's like, have you had Fergus on yet? And I'm like, as you wish, sir. And I reached out to you, and here you are.
Powerful fella, isn't he?
He's like the wizard behind the curtain.
That's true.
It's all Blair. But here's a fun fact I'm going to share. It was revealed recently. Okay, Steve Kane, the last punk rock president, came by, and Steve Kane just drops in the mix. Like, he's just chatting, and he talks about his favorite band of all time, the Raving Mojos. Do you know this band?
Well, I remember the band from those days.
Okay, let me play a little. So we're going to hear it from you, obviously, but just a little taste of the Raving Mojos. Not quite the Sattalites, but...
There's a thread there.
You know, I record, your episode 1530, so I've had many conversations about the Toronto music scene. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, but I feel like the Raving Mojos don't quite get the credit maybe they deserve until they sort of pop up here and there when someone like a Steve Kane shouts them out. But I just want to share that Blair Packham and I were chatting about the Steve Kane episode, and he says, this is Blair Packham, he says the Jitters and the Mojos, the Raving Mojos, used to gig together all the time, and that Blair Packham produced a demo of theirs, and to even kind of tie it a bow in all this, Blair Richard Martin, who is the lead singer we're hearing here in the Raving Mojos, his brother was the Jitters drummer. So, and also a little fun fact, because those
pink drumsticks,
they were gifted to me from Gene Champagne, who's the current drummer for Teenage Head. And Blair Richard Martin was, for a brief time, was the drummer with Teenage Head after Frankie died. And apparently there's a Facebook group from people who want more info called Friends of Jitters and the Raving Mojos that somebody started. So I just thought, since Blair suggested I have you on, and here you are, I would share that connection between Blair and the Raving Mojos.
Well, I think we can pin people's age by the bands that affected them the most, and you've got that Martha and the Muffins shirt on.
Right.
And, I went through that whole scene when it was happening in Toronto, but I was like 10 years older than everybody else. So I came at it from a different kind of space, right? Like, it was a great scene, and I immediately responded to it because of what had happened in the 60s there. And, I'd gone off and done different things or whatever, but I was working on Queen Street, and it was all going down, and I heard these bands, and I went, shit, I can play those songs.
Well, we're going to get this entire story. We're going to start before the Sattalites, actually. But I got a note from a gentleman named Al Grego, who's a great supporter of this program. And we love Al Grego on this show. Al says you were one of his teachers at Trebas many years ago.
Wow. Okay.
And he says you're a cool dude. So what you remember? Do you remember a student named Alan Grego by any chance?
I'm sorry to say that I remember all the lyrics from all the songs since I was like 4 years old, but many other things
But no
slip away.
Grego.
Well, some things slip away. But it's interesting. I run into ex-students all the time, right? And it's interesting to get their perspective on what nonsense I was talking.
Well, he says you were a cool dude.
Well, there you go. I was a cool dude.
You'll take that. But so for how many years were you teaching there, and what were you teaching?
Well, I taught at Travis for a while, and I taught music theory to people that were into hip-hop and didn't want to know anything about music theory at all. And I taught music history to people that really didn't want to know very much about music history either. But, I somehow managed to liven the thing up and make it happen. And then, but I had to leave there because the way that place was run, the kids had better equipment on their laptops than the school was providing for them. So I moved to another place. Anyway, I've been teaching at the Harris Institute for about 12 years, and I do a similar kind of thing. I have a couple of production projects, and I do a history of Canadian music, actually.
Is this on Jarvis?
It's on Sherbourne.
Sherbourne. I meant Sherbourne. I know why I said
Sherbourne near Queen.
Do you know Jane Harbury?
Of course I know Jane.
I literally biked there fairly recently to deliver a palma pasta lasagna to Jane.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. And I biked down there too. I was going to bike here today, except they call for, I think it's raining right now, actually.
It's doing that weird spitting thing right now, and it's one of those hot days. You might have.
Well, my daughter said the weather says squalls. Daddy, what are squalls?
What are squalls?
Well, squalls are short little rainstorms with bursts. A lot of wind. Yeah, little bursts. The way we've been getting, and they're usually like a maritime kind of thing.
You hear about like in The Perfect Storm or something, some kind of boat movie or something like that. So shout out to Jane Harbury.
Indeed.
Before we get too into the music and lighten things up, I do want to start on a serious tip, and I want to offer my sincere condolences to the Petrucci family, especially our dear friend FOTM Anthony Petrucci, because Anthony's father, Marsilio Petrucci, passed away at the age of 100, and Marsilio and his wife Palma, they're the family that basically opened up the first Palma Pasta retail location in 1985. They're also Anthony's parents. So my condolences to the Petrucci family, everyone who knew and loved Marsilio. 100 years old, passed away. And you do have a gift, by the way, from the Petrucci family. They did send over a large meat lasagna for you, Fergus, to take home so you could taste how delicious the Palma Pasta food is. And it's thanks to Marsilio.
Well, I really appreciate that, because that will be a good afternoon snack for me.
Well, it's gonna be more than a snack. You should see Fergus, you're gonna need a bigger boat, as they say. This is a huge lasagna.
Well, a rising boat, when it's full of lasagna, lowers all.
Unless there's a tide there, rising tide, and then you have to think about those squalls, and then you got to be careful.
The squalls are the worst thing.
Beware the squalls. I've seen The Perfect Storm. It doesn't end well for those guys. So, all right, and since I'm giving you gifts off the top here, and I hope your phone didn't break.
I'm indebted. No, it didn't break. It's got this cassette.
Oh yeah.
Cover on it. Which
I can play that
fabulous.
cassette, and they got a cassette player here. Okay, we're kicking it old school. So. Yes, you got the Palma Pasta lasagna, but I'm also going to give you some fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery.
Wow. All right.
You go, Fergus. You could crack. You want a cold one? I'll go
Wait. Are there not 5 Great Lakes? There are only 4. There are only 4 beers here.
You know what, Fergus? You are making a compelling argument here. So this is a hop pop, non-alcoholic. Not everybody drinks alcohol. And that is delicious, too.
I'm actually one of those people that don't drink alcohol. But
You know what?
I'm
I
going to
can give
give
you
these
the
to
hop
Blair.
up.
I'm going to give these to Blair.
Blair Packham deserves those for hooking us up. So, Blair, you're getting some fresh craft beer. I know you're listening at home. Okay, here's where I want to start. I'm going to play a bit of a song, and I'm going to play a note I got from Rob Bruce, who was the keyboardist in Spoons. Or is it The Spoons? What do you think? Is it The Sattalites or Sattalites?
Originally, it was Sattalites, and Joe used to get irritated, but I've given in.
You've loosened up on that one. I think Gord Depp is the same
People
way.
don't put punctuation in text, so,
Okay, so more on that in the name and the spelling and all that. But before we get to the Sattalites, I have to watch your reaction as I play this to see if you even know what I'm playing.
Oh, I know what you're playing.
We'll let it brew a bit. Shout out to Great Lakes. And then I'll read the note from Rob about this song. I guess I'm supposed to talk it up and hit the
They
post.
never let this go on radio now. It's too long an intro.
Someone outside is calling your name. How did they know where to find you? I bet you thought that it was only a game. Just one look and they blind you. Your friends are sleeping and they want to forget. That tired vision is creeping. You're in the danger zone. Let's hope you have nothing to hide. You're in the danger zone. We're gonna have to take a little ride.
Move over, Kenny Loggins. Here's the real danger zone here. Okay, so Rob Bruce writes in, I just found this deep cut on Fergus's YouTube channel. It's great late 70s new wave, and I wonder if they were still around in our early Spoons days. Also, his drummer here is Dave Norris, who also played with Drastic Measures. I recognize the rhythmic energy on this song. Fergus, what are we listening to?
Well, this is called Danger Zone, and it was recorded at Kensington Sound, actually, who just celebrated their 50th anniversary. So this was done, I think, 1978, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, 1978. Exactly.
And, Dave Norris is playing, and a guy named Ronnie Wiseman is playing keyboards. And
Any relation to Bob?
Indeed, older brother of Bob.
It all comes back to Bob Wiseman.
Yeah, and they, Gene Martinek, who is one of my heroes from Kensington Market, played a little synthesizer on this, and it was of course it was just one, monophonic synthesizer, but he produced these kind of sounds that you're hearing now.
And that's you on vocals.
And that's me on vocals.
I don't want to bury the lead
and
here.
playing the guitar with that old Gretsch I used to have.
Oh man, who was telling me a great Gretsch story? Oh, it was Randy Bachman, who he found his old Gretsch or something.
Oh yeah,
Japan or something.
But I have a better Gretsch story
Let me
than
hear
that
it.
crap. There was
I love it.
There was a band in Toronto named Osby Feel, and they used to play the Beverly, and we were one of the first bands to play the Beverly, but you said we were getting into that history. This is well before this. But there's a band called Osby Feel, and I can't remember his name, but the leader was a Gretsch fanatic. They had Gretsch drums, they had Gretsch amps, they had a Gretsch keyboard. He played all Gretsch guitars, and the bass player had this 1948 Gretsch hollow body electric bass, one of the first things. So everything was Gretsch in that band.
Wow. They're apparently the people behind Gretsch. They needed. I don't know if they lost stuff in a fire or a flood or something. Something happened.
They were notorious for their things falling apart. The ones that were good were great.
Yeah. They were trying to buy Randy Bachman's personal collection or something.
So I played sax on this, and I noticed you've got the Martha and the Muffins thing on, because this band was current with that band, and there was a thing. There were a few sax players around who played in this kind of style, right? I can't remember the person's name. We played with Martha and the Muffins, but there was a kinship there in that whole thing. And then I played with Drastic Measures sax, and did a little with the B-Girls, and I'm on the Diodes record.
Wow. You're tired of waking up tired, is that right?
Not that record, but on that album.
We just kicked that out, and was it? Yeah, it just got kicked out.
And I'm playing sax on this little. Oh yeah, right. I said that.
You played sax. So okay, let's go back now. This is 1978. So, Fergus, when did you realize you had a proficiency in music? You wanted to be a musician. Take me way back, and then we'll get ourselves to the Sattalites.
When I was 9 or 10 years old, I had a hit parade of songs that I made up, although I strongly suspect that they were copied off of I had a song called Beautiful Moon that I'm pretty sure was Connie Francis's Carolina Moon, which was on the flip side of Stupid Cupid of an MGM 78 that
Stop
my brother
picking
had.
on me.
Yeah, exactly. The flip side was called Carolina Moon. Anyway, so I've always been really interested in the songs. And my dad was a freelance writer and a poet, and he could never really decide who was the greater genius. Was it Mozart or Fats Waller? He wasn't really sure. So we had a lot of that stuff. And I know hundreds of Fats Waller songs, and I just love them so much. And I just love the art of songwriting, and used to read, like many of my generation, the backs of those albums and the liner notes, and study who produced and who wrote the songs and everything. Like it was a journey.
Do you mind if I interrupt to ask you about your dad for a moment? Because Rob Pruce saw that he took a screen cap and he was showing me of your Facebook page 5 years ago. And Young and Elliot and Chaplin, like, just tell me a little more about your dad, because Rob is very interesting.
When he passed away, which was a few years ago now, he was 99. My daughter was disappointed he didn't make his century, like in cricket, but there you go.
Well, like Anthony's father, hit 100.
And I got his address book, and this was from sort of 1950 when he was working for the BBC.
Yeah.
And so in the letter J is Carl Jung's address in Switzerland. He was the first person to interview Jung in English.
Wow.
For the BBC. And then the C page, which is the one I think I posted, is it got Jean Cocteau and Charles Chaplin and with the other C's in there.
Albert.
Camus was in there. That's right. Albert Camus was in there. And he's got Andre Malraux and Jacob Epstein, the sculptor. That's not a name anyone knows, but I'm going to give you a little poem right now, okay? It's about the wonderful family named Stein. There's Gertie and Epp and Ein. Gert's poems are bunk, Epp's statues are junk, and no one understands Ein. So Gertrude Stein and Joseph Epstein and Albert Einstein.
Very good. So
see, when I go, that knowledge goes with me, okay?
No, it's been recorded now. That's the whole point. Fergus, that's the whole point of this.
Oh, I get it.
In 100 years, someone's going to hear that. It's like, I always, like my daughter will, my youngest daughter will recite something that we were saying in the schoolyards in the 80s. And I'll have a moment of like, how does she know that? And then she'll be like, yeah, I heard it on The Simpsons. Because the writers of The Simpsons put it in there. And basically that's how 100 years from now they'll be talking about.
My son was in Annie. He played Daddy Warbucks when he was a little kid, right? Like he had to shave his head when he was in grade 8. They did Annie.
Yes.
And my dad said, well, you know what the origin of Daddy Warbucks is? And I didn't know. But he said he was the villain in the original comic strip because he made his money selling munitions during the First World War. Daddy Warbucks.
Right? Oh, my God.
I know. I know.
That I took, I don't know if it was
my dad had a radio show on the CBC called Now I Ask You, which was all trivia. So he was filled to the brim.
Is this where you get your pipes from?
Maybe. I don't know. Okay. He was a great poet, and he was in the Oxford Book of Canadian Poets. I always have to mention this, but he was edited out in the 70s by Margaret Atwood when she did a new version of it. They took him out of the Oxford Book of Canadian Poets.
That's a shame.
Well, that's what I feel.
All right. So then now, okay. So thank you for telling us about your dad. Rob gave me that tip. It's like, I got to ask him about his dad. So you're a very young man, and you're all into music. So walk us through a little bit of the history on our way to the Sattalites. Well,
we were mad about music. From the age of 8 to 12, I lived in Oakville. And the record store there, and by the way, I went to public school with Dave from the Kings. And anyway, the store there called Lofquist was a furniture store, and downstairs they had listening booths. So literally, it was like the 50s. We rammed our heads in there, and Mrs. Lofquist played the records for us. And one day I got the new Elvis single, which was Marie's the Name of His Latest Flame and Little Sister, that A and B side, like a killer A and B side. And it's the summertime. The records used to come on Friday night from Toronto, and Saturday morning we go there. So this Saturday morning I bought this record.
Yeah.
98 cents plus 3 cents Ontario sales tax. I still have the 45. And then I got on my bike and I cycled up to the pool where I knew all my friends were. And I just stood around and looked at the new Elvis record and went, there's the new Elvis record. Whoa, look at the other side now. And in high school, I have to tell you, we used to, in grade 9 or 10, we'd say, oh, do you want to go down and look at the Beatle amps? So I went to Jarvis downtown, and we go down to the music store, which was beside Basil's at Gerard and Young, and they had the Vox franchise. So in the window, they had the Vox Super Beatles. And we go down and look at the amps, and there would be kids from other schools that came to look at the amps.
Wow.
I know. It was so good.
Wow.
Anyway, so we were mad about music, and I was buying 45s, like, every week I'd get another one, and my mom would say, how many records have you got? I said, oh, it's the same as before. And the pile was getting like higher and higher and higher.
Right.
But I was working hard at the paper route, so it was all good. So then when I got to Toronto, and as I say, I used to make up songs, but I didn't really play any instruments or anything. But when I got to Toronto in grade 9, I went to Jarvis Collegiate, and there was a young fellow there who just started teaching music. I tried not to take music because I had this teacher in grade 6 who put me off music forever, one of those situations. But my mom insisted that I said, I want to take, they had 3 options in those days: music, art, and typing. And I said, I'm going to take typing. And she said, you're not going to take typing. I can teach you to type. So I ended up taking, anyway, very inspiring guy named Ron Chandler, who took a music program that had been basically abandoned. They had a strings program 2 years before, but it was suspended. Took a program, and within 3 years we were like winning awards, and I was playing clarinet in that, and because of Ron, I joined the union when I was 15 because I wanted to play in the 48th Highlanders band, and they wore the Busbies, right? The fur hats, the big fur hats.
Like at opening night at Maple Leaf Gardens, you'd.
Well, this was the thing. That's the reason I wanted to get in, was so I could play at Maple Leaf, because it looked like a great gig. The guys just played the anthem, then they sat there. Right. Remember the flags used to flutter out, and there was a picture of the Queen?
Yes,
right?
yes.
And but that was the year that Ballard got rid of the 48th Highlanders and hired an organist instead. Oh my God. But ironically, I ended up playing jazz with the organist, Ralph Fraser, years and years later. And he told me that he got fired from the Gardens because he used to drink a bit, so by the third period, they would get a little erratic. But Ballard was all about saving money. So anyway, so I joined the union at 15. Had to write a music test in those days. I don't think they still do that. And played, Allen Gardens was my first gig in downtown Toronto, 3750 Union Scale. I thought that was fucking great. Really good.
It's more than they get today.
Yeah. So, like many people, the Beatles, blah, blah, blah. I don't have to tell you about that. Kind of took over everything. And, but I was already interested in songwriting and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I've got a great story to tell you, actually.
Tell me the great story. Quickly, to tell everybody listening that the current keyboardist, keyboardist, is that the term? The organist at Maple Leaf Gardens, not Maple Leaf Gardens, Scotiabank Arena. Where am I here? But he's been there since Maple Leaf Gardens, is Jimmy Holmstrom. Jimmy Holmstrom's an FOTM. He's been over here to tell his story. But he was hired by Gord Stellick in 1988, and he's been there ever since.
Wow. Awesome.
Now back to you.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I said I kept all the records I had. So there was a record that I bought when I was, I think it was 1960, so I was 10. And it's by a guy called Buddy Clinton, which was the stage name of a guy who went on to write many famous songs. But anyway, this song was called Take Me to Your Ladder, I'll See Your Leader Later. And it was about a guy who went to the moon and found that the women were 20 feet tall. So when he landed there, he said, take me to your ladder, I'll see your leader later. Well, the point of this is that I looked at it about 2 years ago. I've still got the record. And I noticed it was written by Bacharach and Hilliard. So it's an early Burt Bacharach song. Oh. And I swear to you, the reason I have this record is because it goes, take me to your ladder, I'll see your leader later, 'cause nothing in this world could be greater than a woman who's 20 feet tall, but beautiful. And they go off on this lovely little thing. And that enraptured me when I was like 10 years old. So I'm looking at this record and I'm thinking, fuck, Bacharach got me when I was 10 with one of his little melodic twists, right? One of his little melodic turns. Right. It's so attractive that he has in all of his songs, right? And there it was. So anyway, there's a story for my singles.
Well, shout out to Kurt Swinghammer, big Bacharach head.
Oh, absolutely. Did Blair tell you his Backrack connection?
Yes, he did. He was entertaining him, and then but he calls in, he taps in Kurt for that, I believe. Like he and Kurt, I think Kurt Swinghammer enters that story.
Oh.
If I remember that story correctly. Yeah, but was it 9/11? For some reason, he was grounded here. I feel like it was 9/11 and Backrack was stuck here because he couldn't fly out.
Backrack used to date Blair's mother.
Okay, you know, so
at McGill.
because he's got multiple. Okay, he did share that, but yeah, he has multiple Backrack stories.
Oh, I know the other story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, hold on, slow down here. So at McGill, Burt Bacharach dated Blair Packham's mother.
That's right.
That's amazing.
I know.
Okay.
Probably had an effect.
Well, listen, any stories of that nature you have, Fergus, just spit it into the microphone. We got to capture all those. That's a good
absolutely, one. Absolutely. So, yeah, but I always liked all that stuff and wanted to be in a band, and I like singing, so I ended up singing with a band that played on the island. And
Like played on the Toronto Island?
Yeah, in the clubhouse on the island there. And we did Honey Don't, I remember, and my girlfriend was there with honey because my throat was ripped out raw trying to compete with Ted Scoville's screaming lead guitar. But
and what was the name of this band?
Oh, you know what? I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I do.
Okay.
The Wombats.
Okay.
There you go. I'd forgotten they were called the Wombats.
Okay.
And anyway, that went through high school, playing with different bands and forming different things. And I just have to say that at Jarvis, I went to school with a rather remarkable cohort of people.
Okay.
Especially...
This is Jarvis Collegiate.
Jarvis Collegiate, yeah. There were a lot of women there that ended up doing quite amazing things in the arts. Pretty incredible people.
You going to name check these some of these people?
Val Ross, really well known as a journalist. Anne Silversize was a great journalist as well, a financial journalist. Anne Ireland, who wrote award-winning novels. Mark Jordan, who's a fine songwriter.
Yeah,
Blair
married
Packham.
to Amy Sky.
Blair Packham was a little later than me.
Right.
Aaron Davis, who is a great arranger and pianist and works with Misha Brugger-Grossman. It was an incredible time. It really was. And there were others, like seriously.
Wow.
And we were all downtown. And I found out years later that Jarvis was the school where they sent the misfit teachers that didn't fit in at the other schools. So we had a fairly eccentric cast of teachers as well.
Very cool.
But it was a good atmosphere. Very creative, and we were downtown. So I lived right next to Yorkville Village, so I used to go and see bands there all the time. So, fuck, so good. Mandela.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I'm glad there weren't phones recording all the gigs so that I can remember them for the golden treasures that they were. I mean, when we played, we used to tune our guitars with a tuning fork backstage while the disco was playing outside, right? So
do you remember the names of all your bands? Okay, so Wombats, and then what's after Wombats?
Well, there was a band that played in our high school called The Collectors that were really good. And so I kind of joined up with them when I got to grade 12 or something. And then we called ourselves the Ginger Group. And we made a great record. I'm going to send you a link to that. It didn't come out as a single. It was just like a demo, but it's a fucking great sound.
Okay.
The guitar was stolen from the New Beats, apparently. When they were like, we like bread and butter, that song, when they played in Toronto. But anyway, we had a rehearsal studio, which was right where the Toronto Library is now. So there was Long McQuaid on the corner. And then just along Collier Street there was a big pink house called Career Girls Unlimited, which was a temp agency. And they owned this square box sort of building behind there, which was rented by a guy named Ernie Schultz, who had a children's theater company. And we rented it from Ernie to practice there. So we practiced there at night. So so you imagine how good that was. Like right at Yorkville and Yonge, we had a studio that we could go to all night long and play music. And we became friends with the MC5, you know that band from Detroit?
Kick Out the Jams.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? Yeah.
Which was the reason why when Led Zeppelin came, me and my snobby friends thought, this is baby music. Right. This is weak. This is pathetic. I'm sorry. But that was what we thought of them at the time, right? This fucking awful leaden drummer and a terrible lead guitar player and that guy with this thing stuffed in his pants. Like, what the fuck? Anyway.
Love the real talk.
Well, there you go. But the MC5 was after John Sinclair was busted, and they came because we knew a guy from Ann Arbor, and they had all their special slang, their special ethos, the whole thing. brother Wayne Kramer and
Of course.
brother Fred Smith and all that stuff. It was great fun.
Nobody left, right? It was nobody left from MC5. I think we've lost them all.
All?
I believe
Really?
so.
Oh, yeah. Wayne Kramer's gone now. Yeah.
I think we're gone. This actually came up with Jack Rabbit was on the program, and we were talking about that. He was kicking out his favorite 10 Canadian bands of all time, but that was Monday. This is Friday. So, okay, so keep going here. Just give me the highlights on our way to the Sattalites, and then I'm going to play more music. And I got lots.
So
more
I went to I like many people pissed off and went to Europe and hitchhiked around and did all that stuff, right? And I wanted to I wanted to get into U of T in the music program, so I spent a year getting my piano and my harmony and my clarinet playing up to the thing, and I just made it by the skin of my teeth. I always tell people, if you think the pop music business is competitive, try to play a classical instrument at that level. It's pretty intense. Anyway, but that year I'd written a whole pile of songs, and my brother was a producer. He's produced some pretty famous Canadian records, and he sent the songs to Capitol, and it was just when the Canadian content legislation had come in and Capitol was looking for people. I was signed at the same time as Shirley Eckhart, as Chris Carney. There's a duo called Aarons and Ackley that was there. There was a band called Pepper Tree. All these bands were signed by Paul White.
Eckhart wrote Let's Give Him Something to Talk About, right? Do I have the right?
Shirley wrote that, yeah.
Yes, okay.
And she was like 15 when she was signed, and I was 20. Anyway, long story short, I signed deals, which meant I only stayed at U of T for like 4 months. However, I did have a great composition teacher and wrote all the string arrangements on my first album, the first Capitol album, which is it's a nice record. It's funny, it's 50 years ago now, but I feel close to it just because it was all those original songs of mine that just kind of fell out of me. I didn't really know what I was doing particularly.
And this is a solo effort?
Yeah, I had 2 albums on Capitol that were solo albums. And I will tell you a story about this.
Yes.
And that is that a friend of mine, who's English, knew the program director at Chum and took the record in. They started playing the hell out of it. And then they found out it was a Canadian record. And they were so pissed off.
Why?
You have to understand that in the Canadian content regulation was passed, the radio stations were kicking and screaming. First of all, they played the Canadian records between 12 and 6 in the morning on Sunday morning.
Oh, the Beaver Hours.
Yeah. Well, but no, they would
dump them, right?
They opposed that legislation really strongly,
right.
and they reluctantly went along with it. The record companies were more willing to go along with it because there was a lot of pressure on them to sign all these acts that were popular. I mean, some of them did some good work in the 60s before they were forced to, like Columbia did, and a few of the other companies did, research the Canadian bands, but it was a real antagonistic situation, so they felt they'd been fooled. They thought we'd tried to pull a fast one on them. They thought it was an English record, so they played the hell out of it. What does that say?
That's funny. Funny.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where you value the imports more than you do the domestic product, and but you'd think that they would realize now, of course, they can play the hell out of Fergus, and that'll be CanCon.
Yeah, well, no, they realized it then too. But anyway, it's a long it's a long ago
okay, but
time.
It sounds to me like the plan was you were going to be Fergus Hambleton's solo artist.
Yeah.
But we know you best from being a vocalist in bands. So what happens? Like, how does that change?
Well, I did another second album for Capitol, which was quite a bit different, a bit more rocky, because I had a band there, which was a nice 4-piece band, and then I made another album that my brother put out on his label because I was dropped by Capitol at that point because for a number of reasons. I don't think of it in any negative kind of way because basically the Canadian business was in its infancy. I didn't have a manager. I didn't know what the F I was doing. Like, I just wasn't, they wanted people who were up for promoting themselves and, and I just... So,
but did you consider at this time doing what people like, Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, and they'd all went to the States? Like, did you consider, I'm going to go to the States?
I did. And I will tell you that my good friend Mark Jordan went to the States and did that. And I made a conscious decision not to do that, literally.
So you decided you wanted to stay in Canada.
I decided I wanted to stay in Canada, and there might have been some fear. And I think actually there was a lot of ignorance because really, honestly, I was pretty naive about the way the business operated. You know, like many younger people coming up now, because there's so much information out, are pretty savvy about a lot of the way the music business works, but I really had no idea. And these days you have to do everything if you want to be in the you got to know about graphics, you've got to, you know, be able to produce your, all this stuff, right? And those days there was Capitol had a photographer and, you know, graphics department. I didn't even think about any of that stuff. I just played music, right? So, and I think I was limited a bit by my lack of imagination, right? But anyway, I did kind of make a conscious decision to just stay here and play music.
And meanwhile, Mark Jordan is living in Marina Del Rey.
No, he's living in Toronto. He came back.
Well, now he is, yeah. Him and Amy Sky are here now. But
he came back from there.
No, I know. I just wanted to shout out the big hit there. Okay.
Yeah, no. He wrote some great songs. We played. I remember rehearsing with him on the island, and we played Bob Dylan songs, and that's when we were 17 or 18 or something.
It's wild that you go back that far of him. Okay, because he's been over. I know this dude. Now, you never had lunch at... Have you had lunch at Allen's with him?
I have not, but we've had lunch a few times, but not at Allen's.
I feel like you could be in lunch at Allen's.
Well, the nice thing about Toronto is that because I grew up downtown,
yeah,
and you know, Mark has lived up on Walker Avenue. I took singing lessons from his dad. Do you know who his dad was?
No.
Charles Jordan, one of Canada's finest baritones, classical baritones, unbelievable singer, and his wife, Gloria, I don't think her name was Gloria. Sorry, but. She was known as a great singer too, but she kind of retired. But my mom, you know, from the early days, she's just a beautiful singer. Yeah. And Charles was a great singer too. He had a radio show in the States, an hour-long radio show. He told me this once, an hour-long radio show. There was him and another woman, 3 backup singers, an arranger, a conductor, 25 members of the NBC Symphony Orchestra, all for that one radio show, right? Like, that's employment, right? And now if they do a show like that, they've got a keyboard guy, you know.
They'll sing to a track.
He was a great singer, and I really learned. I went to him because at this point, I was more interested in more folky kinds of music. So at the time when disco and everything was happening, I was more into like Pentangle and Fairport Convention and stuff like that. And I went to Charles because I knew he knew a lot of that repertoire because they did a lot of it in that radio show. He knew a ton of that repertoire, and I learned a lot of songs from him.
You know, this is me learning so much about these parents of FOTMs in this episode. We're learning about Blair's mom. We're learning about Mark Jordan's parents. We're learning about your dad here. Love it so much. Okay, so please continue.
One thing I've got to point out is that, you know, there's this myth. There's this myth that Toronto is this really dull, backward place and nothing was happening here until the vibrant 60s, right? And, you know, Margaret Atwood re-edited the Canadian Book of Poets because there was nothing happening here. It was all very dull and provincial, right? Well, that was not true. Because we had Glenn Gould here, and we had Maureen Forrester here, and we had Marshall McLuhan here. We had Charles Jordan here. We had my dad. We had Len Peterson. We had all kinds of people. There was a culture going on here. And I think I've traced the reason why that myth got started.
Tell me.
Of all the British expats who came here and were so pissed that they couldn't get a drink on Sundays that they labeled this place as
the
backwater.
Yeah, right.
And that's my theory. Okay, I'm sticking with it.
Well, look, I need all
but there was a cultural, like there was a lot of stuff happening here, and I always find it irritating when people say, "Oh, you know, before there was nothing going on here, before the terrible abstract artists," you know.
No, that's why you're here, man. You were there, as we say on the show. So you were there. You're giving us the real deal here. Okay, now keep walking me. So now, are we in the 70s yet? I've lost track.
Yeah, no, we're in the 70s.
Okay, we're in the 70s.
So 74, 75.
Okay.
And I'm playing a little music, working on Queen Street. And I was working at a place called the Peter Pan, that restaurant there. You know it? So,
I know of it, yes.
Yeah, so... I won't even tell you those long stories, but whatever, the Peter Pan. But down the street was the Beverly Tavern. Yep. And because I was in this band called Moon Food. And Moon Food, we actually have 7 songs that we did with Danny Lanois in his parents' basement in 1975.
There's a name for you.
Yeah, 1975. It was a great sounding demo. And we were one of the first bands to play at the Beverly because Eric went to OCA, the art college there, so, and that was where everybody went to drink from the OCA, so then they started having bands there. And that was the time when, the Dishes started a bit after us, but the Diodes, that was the whole new wave thing started then. And that was when I thought to myself, well, I can play all these. Like I went to see this band with a guy named Matt Harley.
Okay.
And Matt's around still. He's a great artist. He's obsessed about dinosaurs, or he was then anyway. But I remember going to see them, and they did the song Just Like Romeo and Juliet. And I thought, wow, they're playing these shitty old songs? I could do that. So, yeah, that's when I got involved with the Diodes and the B-Girls and Drastic. And Tony knew about my Capitol stuff, and that's how I got involved with Drastic Measures.
Jeez.
And Tony was the guy was troubled in many ways, but the guy was a genius as well, too. Like, he was a really interesting player. We did the theme from Hawaii Five-0, rock style. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was so good.
Okay, cool. Now, early in this conversation, you mentioned that you didn't know how to play anything, but it's worth noting you play the keyboard, you play the guitar, alto sax.
Oh yeah, right.
You're proficient in a number of instruments.
When I entered high school, I didn't actually play any instrument.
Right.
And then I wanted to play the guitar because I wanted to be like the Beatles, and then we had a piano there, and I was so pig-headed, right? Like, my parents got me piano lessons, wanted me to take piano lessons. We're in a pretty artsy family, so, and I didn't want to do it. I wanted to play baseball and hang out with my friends, and they said, okay, we'll do it for a year, and if you don't like it, you can quit. And I'm so pig-headed that I actually quit after a year. But years later, my mom said to me, that woman who was the teacher was not very good. Like, my brother Ian didn't like her either. And I think that I just disliked her on a level, the same way I disliked that woman in grade 6 who sang so badly, right? And
this killed my musical career. I was put in piano lessons, and I hated my teacher, and I just rejected the whole thing. Like, I just, I didn't care enough to care.
Definitely, sometimes that happens, for sure. Anyway, but I was musical because I was making up songs and singing before. Like, I made up a whole pile of songs when I was little just because I liked songwriting. And that's really been my main thrust, is singing and songwriting. So I can play the guitar reasonably, but, if I really want some amazing guitar playing, I hire guys that are amazing guitar players. Yeah, I'm functional on things, So. Now,
you mentioned that you'd rather be playing baseball than learning piano there. Are you still a baseball fan?
I'm a fan of athletics, generally speaking. I like the drama, and so I follow all of the major sports in a way, and not as if like I vaguely know about basketball. I vaguely know who's tops in Grand Prix racing. It's just sort of general. I like the drama of the stuff. However, I have to say that the first year I watched baseball was with my friend Michael Mosley, and it was the year that Mantle hit 58, Maris hit 60, I think, that year, but Elston Howard hit 44, and Bobby Richardson. So I became a Yankee fan.
Maris hit 61.
Okay, because
the record was 60 by Babe Ruth.
Okay, so he hit 61, and Mantle was just behind him, and Bobby Richardson and Tommy Tresh, and those guys were all hitting. Like, that Yankee team was unbelievable. So that's when I started.
Wow.
And the first year I watched the Leafs was the year that they made the playoffs on the last day of the season. I think it was 59. Okay. And then they were swept by the Canadiens in the semifinals, who were that was their fifth cup in a row, I think, that year. But yeah,
and it's funny, semifinals.
Hawks won it, I think, next year.
Really, you start in the semifinals, right? Like 4 out of 6 teams make the playoffs, and you're in the semis right away. There's only 6 teams.
Right. Well, that was the first time they'd been out of the picture for quite a few years, but they had this they were an exciting young team, right? Yeah. Keon was young, and Armstrong was leading them, right? And Alan Stanley had just been brought in and stuff. So.
And then we had a good decade of the 60s.
I went to a few parades.
Yeah, you got to.
Yes, I went.
What's that like? I went to a 2019 NBA championship parade, but I don't know what these Stanley Cup parades look like. I would have no idea. I saw black and white footage of a couple, but hey, so baseball,
it was all in black and white actually in those days. Everything was black and white. There was no color.
There's no color footage of the Maple Leafs winning the Stanley Cup, which is all you need to know. But there's another Maple Leafs I just want to tell you about briefly, Fergus. So there's a Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team. They were the Maple Leafs before the hockey team.
Hey, I follow the Toronto Maple Leafs. Don't worry, I've been to Christie Pitts to see many a game. Don't start with me. This
Okay,
is
well,
this is
listen,
Toronto
I
stuff.
want to hear more
This is
because
Toronto stuff.
this coming Sunday,
Is that
I'm
you
there.
are you up in the booth?
No, I'm gonna. There's actually like a members tent.
Oh yeah.
Where you get your Leafs lager and your hot dogs and everything for members. And I'm right beside this, and this is beyond left field fence if you're looking for it.
Okay.
Not far from where you line up to get your ice cream and hot dogs and stuff. Not far from the clubhouse. So I'm going to be at a table under a tent, and I'll be recording at 2 p.m. Sunday.
No, I heard you say that earlier. I'm planning to come by and visit you.
Honestly, come by.
But I can cycle this time rather than...
Yeah, well, come by and say hi. It'd be amazing. And if you get there a little early, I'm going to throw out the first pitch.
Awesome.
Like, I'm still blown away that I'm going to be throwing out the first pitch.
Wow.
So that's that's worth the price of admission alone. And the price of admission
We'll
is
have
zero.
to come and heckle from the hill. We're heckling from
I'd
the
be
hill.
honored. There's a big group of hecklers there. Can't remember. They have a great name, but
literally, I've been going to see those games for many years.
Did you go to the stadium that where the Tip Top Tailors was there on Stadium Road in Lakeshore?
I'm afraid to say I did see a game there when I was at...
What was that venue like?
I lived in Oakville.
Yeah.
And I delivered the Toronto Telegram. And so there was a Toronto Telegram trip. All the kids, we went to the ball. We went to see the Maple Leafs play, and I don't remember who they played. I think it was Cleveland something. Was there a Cleveland
that I don't
AAA
know,
team?
but I do know Sparky Anderson was part of this team.
I don't remember any of the play. It was a fantastic. I just remember it was a great. We rode in a bus, and we had a ball.
And that's like I've seen photos of. It
was a beautiful park.
Yeah, it looked like a really cool old time stadium.
Gorgeous with those open, Yeah,
like you'd see it in like the natural or something like that. But okay,
I want to assure you though, I was not at the Christie Pitts riots in 1937. Okay, I wasn't there.
I was
going to
ask you if you were there. I thought I saw you there. Okay, so amazing that you're a fan already of the great high quality semi-pro baseball you get at Christie Pitts. You can fill the hill, everybody. Come by, say hi. I'm recording. Fergus is going to be there. I did invite Rick Emmett to the season opener, and Rick Emmett came, and Blair Packham actually picked him up and brought him there. That's what a sweetheart Blair Packham is. But you should have seen the dudes with their Triumph albums who were lined up to get Rick Emmett to sign it. It was wild.
He's such a lovely guy. Rick is such a beautiful guy.
Good baseball player, too.
Is he? I didn't know that.
Right. Particularly slow pitch, but don't mess with Rick Emmett, that guy. Okay. If you need a good guitarist, you give him a call. I think Blair... Is this the Blair Packham episode or the Fergus Hambleton episode? Because it's all about Blair today, but I believe he's produced new music for Rick Emmett. I think that's coming down the pipe.
Oh, my goodness.
So stay tuned here. All right. I want the satellite story. So is there anything pre-satellites that you want to share before we dive in? Should I have been recording this?
I made a few singles for a few independent singles. There was a company called Ready Records that was recording some Toronto people, and I made a couple of singles for them. And I went to England and recorded a nice song with the guy that used Sid Buckner, a famous producer. His son actually lives in Toronto now, or maybe it's his nephew.
Any relation to the late great Bill Buckner, who made an error in Game 6?
Sliding back to baseball, are we? He's never gotten over it. He retired and became a producer of reggae music in England.
Well, he did do that episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, though, where he kind of...
That's right.
He caught the baby, I think.
Right. That's right. No, and I did a nice recording in England. And then when I came back, what happened was I played saxophone. So I kind of joined up this horn section. Okay, let me rewind a bit. When I lived in the Kensington Market, there were two stores there, Stranger Cole and Ronnie Bop, two reggae stores, and down the road was Tiger's Coconut Grove, and he was a Haitian guy from Montreal. But the reggae records, so that's where I bought my first reggae, and I used to go and chat with Ronnie Bop, and Ronnie Bop hired me to do some sessions. So I did a fair number of sessions while I was getting into the folk music and all that stuff. What I was also doing was playing saxophone on a lot of Jamaican sessions. Okay. And there was this guy on Eglinton called George at Monica's Hairstyling, which is still there, but George has passed away. But George did this thing he called coattailing. And what he would do is he would watch the American charts, and if Luther Vandross had a hit, he would record it here in reggae and press the records and then drive to New York and sell the records in Brooklyn and all the Bronx and all the little stores and stuff. So he had a really good thing going. And I
thought you were going to say he'd record them and then it would get airplay in Canada because they were CanCon.
No. He just recorded reggae versions, like rhythm and blues, reggae versions of this. This is before SoundScan, all this shit was outside any record keeping, right? Like you could go to New York and sell 10,000 copies of a record. It wouldn't show up on any chart or anything. Nothing. You know, these guys. There were a lot of these guys around. There's a guy called S&W Soul King on St. Clair who did the same thing. You take Jamaican records and repackage them and whatever. Anyway, so I did quite a few of those things. So I was playing in this horn section, and we would back up Jamaican artists. So like these solo singers would come and they wouldn't have a band. They would just send a song list 2 months in advance that would have 20 songs on it, and then they'd get here and we wouldn't be doing any of those. We'd do all 20 different songs, but they're all some famous people that I played with, Horace Andy and just some great Barrington Levy, all kinds of great artists, and quite a few of them lived here too, like some famous artists. And I played in Leroy Sybil's band as a guitar player, who's a famous Jamaican singer and songwriter. So that was kind of all going on. So I was part of that scene. And so we started a music school. The trumpet player, Jojo Bennett, and myself. There were 4 of us originally that started the school, but the 2 of the guys dropped out immediately. Simo, I haven't heard of him in years, and Breckenridge is an insurance salesman, lives out in the West End somewhere.
But anyway, how did you meet Jojo?
Well, I was playing in this horn section, and we were doing this show. It was Tony Tuff, Cornell Campbell, and George Faith, all of whom had hits, but Tony Tuff had really big... Cornell Campbell had an amazing hit at the time called Queen of the Minstrel. It was a fucking great record. Anyway, we played a number of gigs, and we played this restaurant out on Queen Street, and they said... We'd played the concert hall, which was the Rock Pile, the week before, and there had been a shooting.
888
Someone
Yonge
was
Street.
shot in the buttocks.
Okay.
And then we had this other gig the next week, and somebody said, Jojo's going to play with us tonight. And Jojo was kind of legendary, hadn't been out in public for a while, but he was really famous from his days in the 60s when he was a famous guy in Jamaica. Okay. And Jojo's coming. It was amazing. So I said, okay, I'll meet this guy. So we're playing, and we're 3 songs into Tony Tuff's set. And I look around, and Joe's not there. I go, that's weird. And 2 minutes later, the emergency task force come in and shut the thing down, turn on all the lights, and we have to leave one by one while they search everybody, and there's like weapons on the floor afterwards and shit. But Jojo, with his unerring instinct, knew that something was going to happen and just took off. Okay. That's where I first met him. Okay,
I thought maybe it was with Afreen.
With what, sorry?
Afreen, the reggae singer.
I don't know who that is.
Afreen. Okay,
I don't know who that is.
Then I'm going to address Rosie Gray Teo, if you're listening, and I know you are, that we have some mop-up to do, okay? You know what that means, so we'll take care of you, Fergus, don't worry. Okay, so you meet Jojo. Now, this school, is this the Sattalites Music School?
It is, yeah.
And tell us, what is the Satellite music? This is 1981, I guess we're going back to.
1980, 79, 80, something like that. I think 79 was the... Yeah. So,
and tell me about the spelling, because as I'm preparing and everything, spell check hates the name.
I know, I know it does. Satta.
Yeah. So what is that about? Is that an accident or is that on purpose?
No, that just
to be different.
No, it just means easy. We just Satta. And originally we played music by the Sattalites, but Joe used to say, "We're not Satta, we Satta."
Oh, you know what? I was wondering, and now you've answered the question. Okay.
And I'll tell you the story of let me tell you the real origin story of the Sattalites.
Yeah, please.
Because the drummer that played on a lot of these shows was a guy named Joe Isaacs. Now, Joe Isaacs is a legend and has played on, you could just look him up, and he's played on like Foundation shit from 1964, like really the heaviest stuff, like seriously. And Joe Isaacs was living in Toronto. Great drummer. And Joe had an idea that he wanted to have a reggae band that played ska, but was a show band. So he formed the Sattalites. And that's where the 4-horn guys were. He assembled us. And a guy named Charlie Brown, whose son Maverick Brown is in a local group now. And Charlie had some great songs and great bass player we had. I can't remember his name, damn it. But the kicker was he had this woman make up costumes for us, like Earth, Wind, and Fire. So we had these capes and these spangly kind of costumes. This is 78, maybe 77, maybe something like that. I can't quite remember exactly, but So, and we did a few things. We were on that Black World TV show with Daniel Coderone. I'm sure all the tapes have been wiped, which is really sad because we had made a couple of nice records. And when I did that Ready Records deal, when I was at Ready Records, they let me do a song with the horn section, a reggae song, which I did in French and English. It's a decidedly non-commercial move, but it's called Steal This Girl, but the French side is Un beau jour ta blonde va s'en aller. One fine day your blonde is going to leave you. Woo. And I wrote that with Marie-Lynn Hammond. She helped me with the French because she's a francophone, and yeah. So anyway, this was Joe's idea. So our first big gig was playing with Byron Lee in one of Byron Lee's visits. Now, if you know about Byron Lee and the Dragonaires, he's the guy that made ska popular in the 60s and was the big...
Wave number one.
Yeah, and Joe and Felix used to play with Byron. And they left when they came here for Expo 67. They left and stayed in Canada, and Byron never forgave them. Well, I shouldn't say that because they did meet again later and they did forgive. But we started up playing these ska tunes, and Joe's famous for these ska tunes that he made famous with Byron. We're into... And the fucking power goes. Everything goes at our end of the stage. And at the other end we're in the International Center. We're set up at one end. Byron Lee's at the other end. Our power goes. Byron's band starts, and we don't finish. So that's, And
there you go. And but I need you to understand. So the music school, the band's like you're a teaching group, right? Because this is just for people. The Sattalites Music School is a pay what you can.
Exactly, and we had students come, and so somebody would learn a song on the bass, or maybe 2 songs on the bass. Somebody else would learn a couple songs. Somebody would learn a song on the guitar or the keyboard, and then we'd take them out to a restaurant, and that was the recital. So they'd all have their song to do, right?
Okay. Can I play a Satellite song?
Sure. Which one are you going to play?
Well, I'm going to play some of the hits here. Let's play some of the hits.
Well, if you do want me, give me little sweet talk. But if you want me, don't leave me on, girl. And if you need me, come on, show me that you love me. And when I'm feeling blue and I want you, there's just one thing that you should do. Just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my baby, show me that you're mine, girl. Alright, just give me some kind of sign, girl. Oh, my darling, show me that you're mine, girl. Alright, well, if you do want me, give me little sweet talk. But if you want me, hey, don't leave me on, girl.
Fergus, this was a big hit.
This did, and still continues to roll along, which is kind of amazing.
And this is not the first album, right? So I mean, this is early days for Satellites. And what stations? I'm curious. What stations are playing this? What radio stations
are playing it now? You mean?
Oh, back then.
Back then?
Yeah.
I went into an office, and I got on the phone, and I phoned radio all across the country. But we started with "She Loves You," which was the first single we did. Right, and this was after we'd done our album. We were just looking around for something to do, and I used to sing this to my girlfriend when I was in grade 10 because I love the record so much. I have the Brenton Wood album with this song on it.
Right. Give me some kind of sign. This is, I believe, that the pop charts in this country, it went to number 44, but it's number 9 on the adult contemporary charts back then.
Yeah, I can still hear the distortion on the bass, but whatever.
You got to let that go, Fergus. People like what they hear here. People like what they hear. You actually had a bigger hit, which I'll play next here, but I'm going to ask you about Sunsplash. So, tell me, what was Sunsplash? You played in front of 25,000 people at Sunsplash in Jamaica.
Yeah, that was... that year, Sunsplash, probably in many years, it was 4 nights, and we were on the International Night, it was called. So it was a band from Africa, a band from Mexico that was fantastic, as I recall. And we played on that night as well. It was fantastic. Really, really great. Quite a moment.
And how'd you get the invitation? They just liked what they heard, or what? How'd you get the
I'm not
invitation?
sure about that. I'm really
Who
not
made this
sure.
happen? Come on, Fergus.
Well, Jojo and I went down in 1986 for the 100th anniversary of the school he was raised in, Alpha Boys School, where he learned his trade, run by the nuns. And that was an absolutely amazing concert at Cariff Theatre in Kingston. That was and honestly, I've been to Jamaica in a few years. The last time I was there, a lot of people remembered me from that concert because at that time, I mean, I'm sure there were maybe other white guys singing reggae, but other than UB40 and us, there wasn't anybody else.
That's a good point. And I'm wondering, so Sattalites and UB40, did you hear UB40 first coming out of England or whatnot, and then you were influenced by that, or were you guys just mutually exclusive streams that were kind of going on different sides of the ocean? Like how did...
Well, I was already playing reggae in the scene, and so was Jojo, and he'd been playing reggae for years, so it was just, I didn't really think about it, really. It was just a continue, and they were doing it over there, so... Right. And in those days, things... And I'm just observing here, but things are quite niche driven right now, right? I find that even huge stars, they can be enormous with billions of streams, and you could go out in the street and most of the people you spoke to would never have heard of them, right? So in a way, we were almost more connected back then in a way, because everybody's connected, but it's very siloed. Like, where I teach now in Harris, I ask about like Chapel Rowan. I don't know if you know who Chapel Rowan is. Okay, so Chapel Rowan's blowing up these days, as the expression goes.
Right.
And I ask my students who are in the music business, have you heard of? And some go, yeah, oh yeah, wow, yeah. And some go, I don't know, no idea.
Right.
So, do you know what I mean? Like, there was a whole scene going on here, and now there are scenes, but like all those jazz guys, right, from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and to a certain extent the rock people afterwards, they had a common literature. So it meant they could, and live music was, they could play together and jam together, and they did that, right? And now people from different genres don't. There is some. I'm generalizing here.
Sure,
you understand?
of course.
But by and large, there's not that same common literature in a way. Do you know this song? Oh, I don't know that song. But what about this song? Wow, it's a hugely popular song. I've never heard of this song.
This is true for all art, right? Because this is true also for television, right? Like it used to be that you had the 3 big networks or whatever, and this, MASH was on whatever it was, CBS or whatever it was. And everyone tuned in for MASH because it's a monolithic culture.
Right.
And today there's like 400 streaming services, and just to be a big show people are talking about. You've never even seen this show. I was
going to say about live shows, which is one of the things, is that there used to be shows with different genres on the show, and now you go to a show and it's all the same kinds of and I've been told by some of my students, you can't do these 2 bands together because these people will leave when the other band comes on,
good
right?
Point.
And there was more, I don't know.
Remember Starstock, which Starstock was exactly 20 years ago, I believe. So, but there was this, AC/DC and Rolling Stones, a lot of, in the Venn diagram, a lot of common fan, but then, Justin Timberlake played, right? And I was like, oh, the AC/DC and Rolling Stones fans weren't as into Justin Timberlake, but there's an example where you kind of...
Well, the big festivals now have a fair variety of things, but they're also niched off, though, because you go to different stages to hear certain kinds of things.
Different stages or different nights. I was just at Beer Festival, and they had there was a hip-hop night, and then the next day was going to be the country music night, and then there was this emo night, basically Taking Back Sunday and all this stuff, but absolutely keep them in silos. Don't mix them up. Don't mix and match.
Yeah,
like mattresses.
It's kind of ironic, but when the Roman Republic was happening, if some incident happened, the nobles would get their scribes to write it out. People could write it, and they'd post it on the wall at the forum, and the other scribes, the slaves of the other people, and the news would be all over Italy within a day.
Right.
We have this image that, things didn't get communicated, but it was all over Italy in a day. And we knew what was going. There were local scenes, but we kind of knew what was going on. People would, this band from England. Oh, wow, like all this stuff.
I love how far back you went with that reference. I was going to ask you, Fergus, were you there? Okay, 'cause we're talking to you were there, man.
It was just before the Christie Pitts riots, actually. That was.
Love it. And of course, as Freddie,
we came at them in a phalanx.
I'm going to play the song which I believe to be your biggest Canadian hit. I'm going to play it next, but we should talk about your live performances, right? Very enthusiastic. The reason Freddie P was talking so highly about the Sattalites was the live performances, which he loved, right? So you guys just were great live.
You know what? We were good live, no doubt about it. And Jojo was an amazing performer. Learned a lot from him. And mistake, fish steak, or beef steak, it's all the same. One monkey don't stop no show.
Where is your Junos? Like, where are your Junos, I should say?
I have one of the plastic ones somewhere. I don't know where they are.
So wait, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? It's plastic? Like these Junos?
Like the glass ones, the triangular glass ones.
Okay.
And I have a plaque somewhere. I don't know.
Okay, you got a plaque. Only because I'm always curious, but I do know that the Sattalites have won a couple of Junos.
Yeah, we won two.
Yeah, for reggae group. Okay, let's play that big hit here. Get a few more Satellite stories here.
Produced by Terry Brown, by the way.
Love the fun facts. Keep them coming.
Terry Brown.
And what are we, mid-80s here? What are we at? 85 or something? Maybe?
Oh, this is 1990.
We're 1990, okay.
We are, yes.
Shit.
My mama told me, she said, now son, please beware. There's this thing called love, and it's everywhere. Don't you know now? It can break your heart, and leave you here in misery. But since I met that little woman, well now I feel it happen to me. When I say that it's too late to turn back now. I believe I'm falling in love. It's too late to turn back now. I believe I'm falling in love. I found myself falling.
So what are you thinking when you're hearing this in the headphones?
We always play this at weddings.
It's a warning. It's a warning shot here. It's too late to turn back now. Sounds good in the cans, though? You proud of this?
Yeah, no, it sounds good. I'll tell you, I give a lot of respect to Terry Brown, for obviously all of the things he's done over the years. Every now and then I hear, I just died in your arms tonight, and it's a fucking great record. But anyway, I was in, I don't know if you remember Cultures, this sandwich shop.
Oh, yes.
So they would have music playing.
Yeah.
So I'm in there, there's busy noise and everything, and it's playing on a tiny little speaker, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I can hear the kick drum. Like, Terry's mixes were very adaptable. Like they worked on a lot of different media. It's interesting. We recorded this at Metalworks.
Hey.
I know. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Okay. It's all coming full circle here. What is the current status of Sattalites? Like, what is... Yeah, tell me.
I'm glad you asked me that question, Toronto Mike. I'm glad you asked me that question.
What would you say is the current status of these? I'm so scared to say these Sattalites. I thought it was these Sattalites, but now I'm learning it's just
Joe
Sattalites.
passed away a couple of years ago, so we're all pretty relaxed about that now. But, so I decided... Okay, so I know that the songs are still getting played on, like, Boomer radio and stuff, right?
Boom, 97.3.
Exactly. They play my songs
Stu
regularly.
Jeffrey's got to be playing that one. Oh, May Potts has got to be kicking that one.
Love May,
Yeah.
So I said, and we played for 14 years at the Orbit Room just as a 4-piece, right? So, and Joe had a heart attack, so he couldn't really do it. So we went down to a 4-piece and blah, blah, blah. So we were still playing every week. We're tighter than dog shit.
Is that tight? I don't know.
No, my friend Jackie say tighter than the bull's ass in fly time.
That's better.
Yeah. Anyway, and I wanted the horns. Like I was missing the horn, because that was one reason why people loved us live, right? We had a great horn section, and I swear to you, a trombone player, just the visual alone of a trombone player makes people feel good. Like,
Yeah.
There's higher trombone players just so I can have the visual. Like people just feel better when they see somebody blowing the trombone.
That's
Seriously.
a good point. Like when you see the trombone,
it's
you know
true.
you're in for a good time.
It's true.
It's party
So
time.
true. Anyway, I missed it, so I thought I'm going to relaunch the band as a big band. So there's Bruce. I have to mention Bruce Mack, the bass player. I've been playing with Bruce Mack since 1974.
Wow. That's 50 years, buddy.
Played in Moon
That's
Food.
50 years.
Played in Moon Food. He played on I Can't Help, and that song that you played earlier. He's all the way through the Satellite stuff. Played at the Orbit Room with me. So I got to give a shout out to Bruce because he's awesome. And Dave Fowler, who's the original keyboard player, he's had a few health issues, so he hasn't actually played. He did play one gig with us. And Neville, the guitar player, wrote a lot of great songs. He's living in Buffalo, but he comes and plays some gigs with us.
Sure.
So anyway, long story short,
Neville Francis.
Neville Francis. I put the band together as a big band, like a 9-piece, and we're finding our audience, and they're there. And we played some things like the Burlington. We played at the Performing Arts Center in Burlington and the festival they had there, and we've done some other things, and we're playing Hughes Room on September the 26th.
Back to Jane Harbury.
Exactly, and Jane Harbury promoting that show, and
She'll probably be asking me to have Fergus Hambleton on the program to promote it.
So the other thing we do is we're playing it. So that older crowder is there with us, right? We've been doing really well, and then we also have playing at the Drum Taberna. Do you know the Drum Taberna?
No.
So anytime anyone says to me of my age group, there are no clubs in Toronto, or nobody. When they say that, I say, well, you should check this place out. It's on Queen Street. We play 11:30 there till 2, and there's a band after us. They have 4 live bands.
Say the name of that place again.
It's called the Drum Taberna.
Okay.
And it's like run by these Eastern European guys, and there's a great menu of pierogies and shit. And the band they've got so much interesting music. This is my idea of that's how a scene gets created. Like right now in Toronto, Toronto's stuffed with good musicians, right? You want to find someone to play Congolese music. You want to find someone to sing Persian ghazals. You can find anything in Toronto, really high quality.
Yes.
In Kensington Market, there's a real scene going on. Drum Taberna, there's a scene going. There are scenes still happening, which I personally love because that makes me think of the 60s, makes me think of what was happening when I got involved in the new wave thing, because that's what I like. I like community of musicians. I like the interaction that comes out of that. I like the common literature that I was talking about. I like that stuff. And I like the thread that runs through everything. And I see that thread, even though it may not be obvious to other people. But I know the thread. Like, playing Jamaican music has been so interesting because we're both British colonies. We've got the same culture. Like the slang is a bit different. The food's slightly different, but honestly, a lot of the stuff is the same. I got a great example for you when we were recording with George Semku. Do you know that name at all? He was in Richie Night in the Midnights, and was a legendary, wonderful guy. He produced some Satellite stuff on the very first album, a couple of the tracks, and. Oh yeah, this is a nice record too. Colleen and Sharon Lee. And
I want to hear the rest of that. I don't want you to forget where you're going there, except that I'm playing this because this is a cover of "Walking on the Sunshine" by Katrina and the Waves, and it's a great version. And of course, that song is the version that hit was recreated, but the original version of this song was released by Attic Records here
in Canada. That's right.
Canada.
It was a big Canadian hit.
Yeah, Alexander Mayer and his partner at Attic Records. But I was going to ask you, and again, don't forget the story you're in the middle of there, but I was going to ask you exactly, if you could tell me what exactly is Solid Gold Records.
I'm not sure if I can answer that question directly.
See, I'm keeping the difficult stuff for later.
The other lawsuits floating
around. What the hell is Solid
anyway?
Gold Records? Because I'm trying to learn about it, but it's like sounds like in 81 or something. You signed with Solid Gold Records.
No.
See, this is why I need Rosie Grade TO to listen up. So, Fergus, why is this misconception out there? Do you need to call your lawyer? Should I? You want me to call your lawyer? You look hesitant.
No, they were just some people that leased the tracks from us, right? And they it's hard to describe. The fellows passed away now, the lawyer that was involved, and they had a company called Casablanca, so we had some deal with them just to put out the older stuff. Like, we leased some stuff to them for a while, and then it was bought up by, like, after Ed, the lawyer, died, and it was bought up by, it's Casablanca was called, and then it was Linus Entertainment, and I think Linus has been sold now too, so it's just been sold. So, and I actually was talking to someone the other day who wants to lease some of the Satellite stuff, so I have to look at the contract and see when it's up with.
Okay,
with
yeah.
Solid
So
Gold.
Linus Entertainment acquired Solid Gold
Yeah.
Records in like 2013.
Right. So.
And I'm seeing a whole bunch, like True North Records is in that. Bucket now.
Linus bought a whole bunch of stuff, and I think it's been sold now again.
Okay,
right.
so we do have some.
So this
mop-up
was
to
all
do.
just put the stuff in the catalog stuff out, like I wanted to have it.
Okay, gotcha.
out in
Okay,
some-
I because I did.
and also a lot of it was on vinyl originally, right? Like it's pre-CD, right? So I wanted to release the stuff on CD.
So you were talking about the scene in Toronto and the thread, and it was fascinating to hear you talk about that. And that ties into a question that comes in from Cameron. Cameron, he says, can you ask Fergus what he likes about playing at 2 East End venues? And I don't know how to pronounce this one. Hirut?
Hirut.
See, I knew I'd butcher it, man. But Hirut, and then one I was at recently, actually, Noonan's. So
Oh yeah.
the latter, I guess that's Noonan's, which is on the Danforth there. He does super jams with Andy Mays, who's also an FOTM, and Cleve Anderson, who, we mentioned Bob Wiseman,
I
who was
played
in
with
Blue
Cleve on
Rodeo.
Sunday, yeah.
Cleve Anderson was the drummer in Blue Rodeo. So what can you tell me about these venues and these good people that you're jamming with?
Well, let's talk Noonan's first of all.
Yeah.
It used to be called Dora Keogh's. It was an Irish pub.
Right.
And so I have this thing. We love the Byrds, the band The Byrds, obviously. Right. And
not the Alfred Hitchcock
So
film.
Tim Bovaconti and I, do you know Tim? And Tim?
Only from Blair Packham.
Right. So Tim Bovaconti and I put a Byrds thing together. Now Tim plays with Burton Cummings. Tim is an awesome guitar player and fairly knowledgeable fellow about all things musical, especially.
Would he be a good
related to
guest
the
on this
60s.
program?
He would be awesome.
Because another guy, Blair,
he'd be
says I should
awesome.
book. So, okay.
Anyway, so we with Andy Mays from the Skydiggers and Cleve and a guy named Bob McKittrick that both Tim and I have played with for years. Bob actually runs the music program at Dixon Hall, so he's really done amazing stuff as an educator. I give Bob full. He's really done an amazing job. It really is totally incredible. In Regent's Park, like the music stuff there is so good.
Amazing.
Anyway, so we do the Byrds, tribute to the Byrds, called Birds, 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 and we have to learn 34 songs. So, and I don't use a cheat sheet, okay? I've got all the lyrics, okay, Toronto Mike? I've got all the lyrics in there.
That you can remember.
That, because I love that song. Well,
what he had for dinner.
Jane Rowland gave me the album for Christmas in December 1965, and I just love the Byrds so much, just so much. Anyway, so Noonan's is a great little place, and we're going to do the Byrds thing again. Then I'm not quite sure when. We just did it recently.
I was at Noonan's super recently, biked over there from here, so I biked there for a book launch. Mary Ormsby wrote a book about Ben Johnson.
Okay.
And that book launch was at Noonan's. I was just there. I actually invited Cameron, who some may know better as Cam Gordon, FOTM Hall of Famer. I actually phoned him. I said, hey, I got a +1 for this thing. He lives nearby. He actually he's guessing based on all these times he sees you playing that you live in the East End. You don't have to dox yourself, but are you an East End guy?
I'm not,
Okay, well, you're wrong, Cam.
I grew up at Young and Bloor, and I'm still roughly there.
All right,
so,
right by the Uptown Theatre.
Hirut is a Ethiopian restaurant run by this guy named Tebebe, and his wife's name is Hirut. And she does the cooking there, and they have jazz there. So what I've been, I should tell you about the other albums I've got going on.
Yeah, give us the 411 on what's going on with your life now.
But I was going to finish my story about George
Finish that
Semkiw.
story. Finish that story about George.
It was just about language and about our connections, right? But Jojo used to say when we were doing these sessions, let George do it, let George do it. So I was reading a P.G. Wodehouse story. Do you know who that writer is?
No, you're basically showing the world that I've got so much to learn. I have Fergus. I need to be educated. I don't know that name either.
Well, one of the finest comic writers ever. But anyway, one of his characters says, "Let George do it," and I think to myself, why was that phrase that this Jamaican guy who went to Alpha Boys School is using the same phrase that this English guy was using in a novel written in the 1920s. What's the connection?
Right.
And I found out it was a fairly common expression because Louis XIV, I believe, his finance minister was Cardinal Richelieu. Cardinal Georges. Okay. And when he wanted to raise taxes, the king wouldn't raise the taxes. Georges would do it. He let Georges.
Okay.
So that phrase went from France to England and went from England to Jamaica and then was forgotten in England, but still current in Jamaica.
Oh, that's wild.
I know.
But that's like when you...
Those are the
there's
threads.
a phrase I use.
Those are the threads I'm talking about.
By the way, I love it so much. And I try to do that on this program too, just maybe different threads. But the phrase I will use often is Bob's your uncle. Okay, Bob's your uncle. I will say I have conversations with Americans who don't even know this expression. And then you have to... What's the origin of this term? And I think there's an English... It comes from England and whatever. It's interesting to see the etymology of these.
Do you know?
I can't remember now. But I can't remember now. I think it's British.
Well, what good are you?
I know. I'll have to Google it.
So when I sit in the park and read the paper, the ice cream truck comes by.
Right.
And they used to play "Oh Susanna," public domain. But now they play this melody that goes lang 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 lang. It's one of those circular ones that never resolves. It just keeps going around and
and
around.
It's distorted, right? I find a lot of them are distorted.
But it's a children's song. Cece, my playmate, come out and play with me, and bring your dollies 3, da 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 da, climb down my apple tree. And so I thought, I'm sitting in the park, and the thing's just like going for 20 minutes. So I'm thinking, what? So I got to look this up. So I look it up.
Yeah.
And it was originally a pop song with a totally different lyric, and some teacher put these other lyrics to it, and it became famous as that. It's not a recorded thing. This is a passed along thing. Anyway, I was talking about Harut, and Harut has all great Ethiopian food and jazz. And Toronto is stuffed with great musicians, and it's stuffed with great jazz, especially bass players. There's so many really super bass players in this town. You can't believe it. Like super bass players,
right?
Like world-class bass players. It's amazing. Anyway, Harut has music, I think every night, and fine quality jazz, like the fine players that play here in various combinations of things. So I've done a few nights there where I've done some singing there.
Very cool.
With Ted Quinlan and Paul Novotny, we did a nice night of singing all standards because I love that shit. And I have a album out called the Jazz Lovers Society Volume 2, which is...
The Jazz Lovers Society Volume 2.
Right, which is a lot of standards, but some original songs that I wrote, including my second song that I wrote in French. So
no rest for the wicked here. You're just warming up still.
And then, shall I tell you the other things?
Go ahead. First fun fact real quick, because we did mention Cleve Anderson, and I feel obliged to. I know I mentioned Blue Rodeo, but do you know Cleve Anderson's ex-wife is Ingrid Schumacher from 104.5? She was there for many, many years.
That's right.
Before they made the bad decision to cut great talent.
I met Cleve back in the punk new wave days of Battered Wives.
Oh, yes. I'm going to get Cleve on the show because he was doing shows with Mike Boguski, who's actually the current keyboardist for Blue Rodeo, and they were calling it East of Jane, I think.
Yeah, they were doing like an organ trio.
Yeah, and
I like Mike.
Mike Boguski, his brother. I went to high school with him. Mike Boguski's brother, Mark Boguski. So they were connected that way. But during the pandemic, he played organ in the backyard when we were also starving for live music, and it was just absolutely wonderful. So Fergus, on the home stretch here, before we say goodbye, yes, this is your chance. Give me all the info on what's new, what's going on, anything you want to share with the FOTMs listening on our way out here. I've loved this very much.
Well, I would encourage people to come to see the Sattalites. The next thing we're doing is August 24th, which is in the Milton Fairground, and it's like a giant barbecue, Jamaican barbecue, and there's these DJs going to play, and then we're going to play a set like in the early evening. That's going to be a blast.
That's
and then
cool.
Hughes Room on the 26th of September, and Basement 254 we're playing in October. And I'm playing some gigs around, like I played a gig with Cleve the other day where we just play some old rock and roll and stuff like that. So I'm playing on the island on Gala Day on Monday, and next Friday I'm playing on the street in front of Noonan's, actually.
I'm not playing with
Cleve that day. I'm doing other things with Cleve, but Yeah, and then I haven't on the recording side. I just want to mention this because
Please.
it's so hard to get any traction on anything. But I did a beautiful album called Neighborhoods in 2019, which is available on vinyl if you can find the fucking thing. But and it's about all the musical neighborhoods I've been in my life, and that's
Hey,
a
I like
beautiful
that.
sounding record.
I like that.
And we have the Jazz Lovers Society Volume 2, which is a beautiful sounding record. I didn't manufacture anything of that. And then I did an album with a guy named Lord Sassafras, who's a Jamaican DJ. And he has a whole pile of songs that he wrote that have got like verses and bridges and stuff. So he got me to sing them. So there's an album that's out. It's up for an award, the Reggae North Awards. It's up for an awards. It's all ska and reggae. And then we put out a new satellite single, and we're going to working on an album this summer. So hopefully we can put out an album. And then I have another album, 14 tracks that are done, but I don't know how to release them yet. I did some country covers and Something Stupid by Frank and Nancy Sinatra. I did that and a couple other things. And yeah.
You're wetting your beak in a lot of areas here. Did you ever cross paths with Jay Douglas, reggae musician?
I saw him yesterday.
Did you really?
Yeah, we did an interview for Global TV that's going to be on tonight. And Jay and I go.
I didn't know that.
Do you remember I was talking about coattailing?
Yeah.
About
Yes.
George from Monica's Hairstyling.
Yes.
Jay used to sing the songs. I would be.
He was in the Cougars.
Yeah, but I mean, he did the coat like we do.
He'd be the vocalist who came in to do the Jamaican version
of the whatever with that song "Everlasting Love."
Yeah.
That thing plagued me for years and years.
Such a small world here.
Yeah.
I was invited.
Great singer.
I was invited to and I'm going to do this, but to participate in a tour of Little Jamaica, and it's like
That's what it was. It was an interview because they were promoting that. And Jay
so
and I
I've been
were
invited
there
to do it,
Yeah.
and then have the organizer on to discuss this.
I think
And I
that's a
have
good
touched
idea.
on this with Jay in the past.
Who are you bringing in, Phil?
Give me that. This one I'll Google for you
Phil
because it's in my
Vassell?
Gmail here. I will tell you right now.
I don't know who does the tour, but
It is
Phil.
a gentleman. I'm going to give you that. It's called. First of all, this is called the Little Jamaica Music History Walking Tour.
yes.
And the gentleman that I will be talking to is. This is exciting as we
Phil
build up
Vassell.
here. I have to read this very quickly. Okay, are you ready? Yes. Phil Vassell, the founder of the CBMAs. Okay, that's the gentleman. You got it.
Yeah.
So it's basically local musicians. They share personal
So that's where
stories
the
and
music,
insights from
the
Little
music
Jamaica's
school,
music history.
music school was on Eglinton, right
Okay.
there.
Yeah, it's going to be at Dufferin and Marley, I think is where you start this tour at 2353 Dufferin Street.
They don't meet.
Well, it says, okay, well, it's beginning at 2353.
And ends at Marley. Yeah,
ending
ends
at Marley,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Of
that
course,
makes
yes,
sense.
of course. Okay, it's all coming full circle here. Love this very much. On our way out, though, Fergus, I need to tell you that if you have, like at Bloor and Yonge there, where I used to live at Charles Street in Yonge.
Yeah, my parents, their first house they bought in 1946 was on Charles Street. $5,000.
I don't need to hear that.
Charles and
Fergus.
Barry.
Yes, I know that area well. When I was going to U of T, I was living there. Now, where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. In your home, if you have a drawer with old cables, old electronics, old devices, don't throw that in the garbage because the chemicals end up at our landfill. Fergus, I need you to go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code. They'll tell you where you can drop it off to be properly recycled. You got it?
I got it.
Okay, and you got your Toronto Maple Leafs book. I've got a
Got my
lasagna
book,
for you.
I've got a lasagna.
You got beer
I've
from
got
Great
some
Lakes.
beer.
I have a measuring tape for you from Ridley Funeral Home. You never know. It comes in handy.
For your shroud, is it measuring your shroud? Is that what it's for?
You can measure whatever you want. The Shroud of Fergus, as we call it.
Yeah,
But
well,
I enjoyed this very much. Thanks for doing
Mike.
this, buddy.
Really appreciate being here out in the. I love this neighborhood too. This is like old style Toronto.
This is New Toronto, which gets overshadowed sometimes by our big bully neighbors in Mimico. Well, screw them. Back in the day, we'd line up on Dwight Street and fight them. New Toronto would fight Mimico, according to historian Adam Bunch. So there's a lot of interesting history here. You're now in FOTM. Welcome to the club. And that brings us to the end of our 1,530th show.
Wow, 1530.
Is there an umbrella website, someplace we can go, like FergusHambleton.com? Is that a good updated place we can go?
That's updated reasonably well, actually.
I was on
some
it,
music available there that you can hear from the newer areas of life, and
learn more about Fergus.
Yeah.
Go there for all your Fergus needs. You can follow me everywhere at Toronto Mike. My website is torontomike.com.
And don't forget the ball game this Sunday.
Much love to all who made this possible. That is the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, and I am there Sunday. I got the greats like Fergus, and I got Elvis, and I got Ben Rayner. Just drop by, say hi. I have a third mic open. People cycle through. It's going to be wicked awesome. Much love to Great Lakes Brewery. Can you say the word brewery? Say brewery for me.
Ooh.
I struggle. Okay, I know that's a non-alcoholic beverage, but that's how I sound after an alcoholic beverage.
The Leith police dismisseth us.
Syphilis. Okay, Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta. Again, my condolences to the Petrucci family. Their patriarch passed away at the age of 100. A long, good life, and gave us some delicious food here. He'll be remembered for a very long time. RecycledMyElectronics.ca. And of course, Ridley Funeral Home. There's a fresh episode of Life's Undertaking we recorded last night with a funeral director from Salem, Massachusetts. Very interesting conversation with Brad Jones and Andrew from Salem. And Anthony. I called him Andrew, but it's Anthony. Okay, I only met him for the first time yesterday. Give me a break over here. See you all Sunday at Christie Pitts.
Like mine.